Now it's time for Movie Friends with your hosts Michelle and Seth. We're talking film without pretension. We're finding cats that are unexpected. We'll watch a movie, film, or schmovie, and we want you to join our journey. So subscribe and share this podcast, or this might just be the last of the Movie Friends. We're movie friends. We want to be your movie friends.
Welcome to New Release Review, part of the Movie Friends podcast. My name is Seth. Today we're talking about Project Hail Mary from 2026, directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. We will be discussing spoilers throughout this entire episode, so if you have not yet seen Project Hail Mary, please pause this episode, go watch it, and then come back and listen. My guest for today is Drake. He's the host of the First Watch podcast. Drake, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well.
I've had you on a couple times actually on my podcast.
It's true. I've been on your show. You're helping me work through my my big sports blind spots. Before we talk about Project Hail Mary, you want to tell us what your show's about, what you do over there?
Yeah. So the whole concept kind of came from seeing Letterboxd talk about or ask people what their favorite first watches of whatever given month was, and I saw a lot of people getting very passionate about their first watches of the month, and some of them were really big movies that they had not seen, and they had finally ticked them off the watch list. And then I'd looked at my own watch list, and it was rather large. Um, and I was like, you know what? I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while, so why not, do one to where I'm kind of ticking off these big movies, not only for myself but helping others tick off some major movies in their watch list, and just talking about how we felt about the movie after watching it for the very first time. So it's basically what it is. It's just myself and whoever is on for that given week will we'll pick a movie on someone's watch list, and we'll watch it separately and then come together and talk about the movie.
Very cool. Yeah, and like we mentioned, I've done episodes with you on $1 Million Baby and the Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams.
Yep.
I knew it would come to me. One film that I liked a lot and one film that I didn't like a lot. And you'll just have to listen to those episodes to find out which is which.
Yeah.
Speaking about liking things a lot, what were your general thoughts on Project Hail Mary?
So I read the book before going into this movie. I had actually finished it by the skin of my teeth before going to go see this. I saw it in 70 millimeter. I was very lucky because my local theater that I go to every week already has a 70 millimeter projector, so I was able to go see this kind of at its largest scale. And I enjoyed every minute of that. Seeing it on the largest screen that I possibly could was amazing. And having a little bit of context going into the movie, just by reading the book, was rather nice as well. And I have been telling people this since I saw it. It is, in my opinion, the best page to screen adaptation that I've seen in a while. It's not the very best, but over the years, compared to a lot of other movies that we've gotten from book adaptations, this is probably the strongest that we've gotten in a long time. But I also believe that it is one of those movies that it is also singular, and that if you have not read the book at all, you'll still really enjoy this movie. At least to me, I felt like it was a great, like, one-off sci-fi story, and just very heartfelt, compassionate. The like action was not too over the top, but it was enough to grip you and keep you engaged in the film. Uh, and overall, just a good time. The humor was great. The pacing was fantastic. Um, Compared to the book, the jumping around, like they did in the timeline was, uh, like they did the same thing in the book, and it didn't feel weird. Usually I get afraid that something like that will feel weird on screen, but it didn't. It felt natural. It felt right. And I'm glad that they stuck to that formula like they did in the book.
Very cool. Very cool. I saw it with a few people who had read the book, and they also felt that it was a very good adaptation. I'm always, what is a good adaptation? What does that mean? Does it mean that they adapted things closely to the book, or does it mean that they took a book and made a good film out of it? And the two aren't necessarily the same thing.
No, they definitely aren't the same.
Yeah. But as far as my general thoughts, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I thought that seeing an actor in a physical space with physical items surrounding him was very refreshing and very nice to see and look at in an increasingly digital world. It was nice. Now, I didn't know almost anything about the film prior to watching it. And so I thought that Rocky was like CGI. And then uh, very, quickly after watching the film, that was the one thing that kept jumping out was that no, Rocky is actually mostly not CGI. And the story of how his performer, they used his voice and then they decided to just keep using his voice. And, he ended up becoming the voice of Rocky despite not being a voice actor, but, a puppet performer. That's all awesome. That's great. What I also appreciated was this is space. And so, yes, there's going to be a lot of computer animation, but I thought it all looked good. It looked good. I thought it looked tasteful. And for a story that is very serious with dialogue that is very comedic, I like that they still chose to put it in a grounded reality physically and visually. That was very nice because I do think that this is a crowd pleaser, right? So this is intended for people to enjoy whether you're 5 or 85, I think. But I do think that kids will love this.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen a few reviews that say that negatively, as if films that children would enjoy are inherently bad. I don't think so. And I think that more movies, if you're making a movie with general audiences in mind, or even like, hey, you know what, let's gear this towards a younger audience, but this is the result, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually better than most kid movies that we get. And
Yeah.
I'm not calling this a kid movie. I want to be super clear. I liked this movie. I don't have major problems with this movie. Well, I have like two, but
Oh
but I
no.
think that, for Lord and Miller, who, they have a history of adapting books that already exist and making, you know crowd pleasing films. I think that this is kind of more of the same of what we've seen from them, but that's not anything bad. I mean, hey, look, I'm a big fan of the Lego movie, Cloudy with a Chance
Same.
of Meatballs, cool. 21 Jump Street, my wife and I saw that in the theaters, and
Yeah.
we thought it was going to suck and then end up laughing our butts off the whole time. So yeah, I don't think that we come to their films necessarily to be challenged, but to see something that's entertaining and fun. And this certainly checks those boxes. I know that in the past you've been a big hater of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Actually, funnily enough, that was one of those movies that was in rotation in our van that had a DVD player.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was constantly in our car, and
Mm,
I remember watching that movie so many dang times. I never really made the connection until, as I got older that it was Lord and
yeah.
Miller.
Yeah.
Um, but it kinda does make sense that that movie is a Lord and
Yeah.
Miller movie, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But to be fair, they have, you know, good movies under their belt. Like, you know, uh, tw I just did a podcast with somebody else for 21 and 22 Jump Street. We did that, like, 2 weeks ago. Um, and we because, Project Hail Mary was coming out, and I forgot how good those were. Like, I revisited them, and I was like, "You know what? I had fun with this." Um, and I was a little skeptical at first whenever I had heard that they were going to do this movie, because I didn't know kind of how they would take something like what Andy Weir would end up writing, because he does such great work, like with The Martian and Artemis, and obviously Project Hail Mary. I was like, I don't know how they're going to adapt this, and I'm kind of worried about that. Now, granted, I hadn't finished the book by the time that I had found out that they were going to do it, but I was still kind of skeptical. But I was surprised in the way that they handled this and the end product that we got. I I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So let's talk about Ryan Gosling.
Mhm.
Ryan Gosling, he has this ability to wear something in a film that then becomes a must-have piece of clothing for movie lovers. I'm thinking of course, his jacket from Drive, the sweater that he wears in Barbie, and now his sweater with like animals on it or whatever
Mhm.
from this movie. So I don't know. I don't know. Perhaps Ryan has a future in modeling clothes. But anyway, Ryan Gosling, main character, Ryland Grace, school teacher turned astronaut. How'd you feel about him?
I When I heard that he was actually going to play Ryland Grace, I was like, "Okay, they're getting someone who's got a bigger name attached to them to do this movie. That's cool, I guess, but I don't know, like, where he would fit in this movie and whether or not he would be a good fit for this movie." But once I started to read the book and I got maybe 2, 3 chapters in, I was like, "Oh, okay, okay. That actually makes sense." It kind of was a per perfect casting choice for Ryland Grace based on the book. Um, I think that he did a great job. He had the tone down perfectly, for Ryland Grace. If you read the book, like, you'll see that, like, a lot of the same, jokey kind of mentality that, uh, Ryan Gosling has in a lot of his other films, he he embodies in this as well. Like, it kind of it fits perfectly. For some reason, I'm guessing that Andy Weir had, Ryan in mind, or my assumption is that he kind of had his pacing in mind whenever he wrote, Project Hail Mary, because this book came out in 2021. So Ryan Gosling already had a bit of a comedic career somewhat at that point. So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of envisioned him as someone, to eventually play a Ryland Grace adaptation. I think he knocked it out of the park.
So the film is pretty straightforward, and the science is explained, I thought, quite well. It's pretty easy to understand what the infection is, what the solution is, what the research is. That all made sense to me. Unfortunately, the previews showed us that there would be an alien, which I thought would have been perhaps better to keep for, as a surprise. But clearly the marketing worked, as this had the highest domestic opening day of all time for a non franchise film. So what do I know? But the big reveal or twist of the film, uh, as Grace wakes up
Mhm,
and he slowly is gaining back his memories, which I thought was done quite well through the flashbacks. He's piecing together how he got there. closer to the time when he, goes under. We eventually find out that he did not go willingly, but was chased down and drugged and then put into a coma against his free will. How did you find this twist?
It's also in the book. That portion is also in the book, and very much like in the movie, it is near the end of the book. So I had expected it. I didn't know like how they were going to portray it on film, but they did a very good job of doing that. Whenever I read it, I I didn't know if he was going to eventually come around to being like, okay, fine, I'll do it, because he didn't really like throughout the book and throughout the movie. He doesn't really have much of a relationship that you see that he would be leaving behind. So the only thing that he would necessarily be leaving behind are his students.
Yeah.
Um, as Strat was explaining, if he doesn't go, there's not going to be any students in the next 30 years, anyways. Um, so it's either go and save the future students that'll be here within 30 years, or sit here and die with the rest of them. I think that they did a fantastic job of like conveying that, as well as showing that, hey, like he was not willing to go like at all. Um, I knew that the whole drugging scene was coming. It played out pretty well and pretty close to what they described in the book, um, which you know was nice. And I looked around, and I was kind of gauging how everybody else felt about it, and everybody else seemed to enjoy it as well. But I was kind of glad that they kept that in there, as opposed to having this heartfelt kind of like, I don't know, recognition that maybe he should do this, instead of this, forced entry into something that he didn't necessarily want to do, but obviously had to do, because then everybody else would have died if he didn't.
Yeah, I hated this. Well, I guess I shouldn't say I hated it. I actually liked that they did that
Yeah.
because I don't know, maybe I would have done that if I was in I mean, we'll talk about her later, but the great Sandra Huller's place is Ava Strat. This was maybe the weakest part of the plot for me,
Okay.
where I felt that they didn't explore him being a coward enough for it to make sense. He's facing the extermination of the entire planet with certainty, something that he knows will happen. He's not like a doubter. He's not an unbeliever. In the beginning, when he's trying to avoid the topic with the kids, he's not trying to avoid it because he doesn't believe in it. He's trying to avoid it because he does. And he doesn't want to scare these kids into knowing, like, hey, you're probably going to be murdered in the next 30 years as resources grow scarce, right? Yes, initially, he doesn't want to go with them when they come to pick him up, but he is shown to be someone who is not afraid to stick up for themselves, because he gets kicked out of the science community for this theory and then insulting people who don't agree with his theory. Then when he's on the base and he's experimenting, he jumps right in. He goes, he plays bowling with the tape and the foil. He builds the contraption to, experiment with his theory. He just doesn't seem to be this like incredibly cowardly, disinterested in human life character until it's like, well, but I don't want to go to space. I felt like they needed to show us a little bit more as to why, beyond just, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm not an astronaut. I don't want to. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the thinnest part for me. Though I did appreciate that it went to, a dark kind of murky place of ethics, and also our, hero, quote unquote, of the film is really not a hero at all. So I liked that.
I I feel that they in the book they kind of expanded on his own, I guess, non-belief in himself. Like he did not believe in his abilities to go and actually contribute to this mission as a whole in the book a little bit more than they did in the movie. Um, so I think that's where a lot of his cowardice came from in the book, but they didn't really play into that as much in the movie as they did in the book. So I think if they would have did that a little bit more, it probably even if they spent an extra 5 minutes on that, it probably would have made a little bit more sense, as to why he didn't wanna do this in the first place. Because he didn't wanna feel like, in the book, he didn't want to go up there, die, only for it to amount to nothing because he didn't think that he could pull it off.
Yeah, and I understand that, but at the same time, someone has to. It's not like he was selected first. It's not like they
Right.
said, "Oh, he should understand why he's being selected." I don't know. I mean, perhaps I'm not allowing him to be a full character. Like I said, for me, it was the weakest part. Take
Yeah.
out 5 minutes of goofing around with Rocky and give us dialogue, give us a monologue, give us backstory, give us an explanation. And I think it didn't do that, but that's okay. How do you feel about where he ends up in the film?
In general, I thought it was kinda weird whenever I read the book, and I felt the same way, um at the end of the movie. I was like, you know, maybe it is a decent ending to this entire story, but I was kind of hoping, because because they talked about the astrophage and how much Rocky had on his ship, um, that he was going to be able to, after saving Rocky, go to go back to Earth. And I thought it was just kind of a weird misplacement of him going to Iridian or Arid. Um, but I don't know. Maybe Andy Weir had an idea for a sequel because I think this is the last book that he released.
Hmm.
I think Artemis came out before this did, so I'm maybe he's got something worked up in his head to
No,
where he'll do a
that's a
thing, but
bad
I doubt it.
idea.
Yeah. I just
That's yeah.
that was the only explanation to me that would have made sense. Otherwise, it didn't really make any sense for him to end up on Irid with Rocky.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was like a sci-fi book
Yeah.
ending, maybe this is the healing of that part of him that did not want to pursue space and going on this journey by himself. He has an opportunity to make it home. Like, he has everything he needs. He's done everything he has to do. And he has the means to actually go home, which is what he really wanted. And he willingly chooses to risk not doing that in order to save his friend and also, everyone on that other planet. Maybe that's why I like it, because he finally gets to make a choice for himself and he chooses to do the courageous, brave thing. So maybe that's why I like the ending. But I kind of was like, all right, it's silly. But this is a very silly movie. So I'm not going to fault, you know, him teaching the rock children as a goofy ending. It's fun. The film is intended to uplift people and make people laugh.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for some people, that is a tough pill to swallow today, facing our real world problems. We can often feel guilty or icky about turning from real world problems to be entertained.
Yeah.
And so I think that for some people, and it's a very, it's a small minority of the audience, I think that the film will fare better in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years when we're not connected to, the circumstances of today's real world problems, I guess I should say. Yeah, I thought Gosling was great. I mean, I think he's always great.
Yeah.
He's one of the leading men who he's got a pretty face, but he's just so well suited for comedy, especially physical comedy. And so I'm glad that he was able to lead this film that would draw on his talents, his natural comedic talents, and that it has had great success, because hopefully that means that more and more, he'll be. And I mean, look, it's not like the guy has been had a scarcity of comedic roles. I mean, Barbie, The Fall Guy, a lot of his biggest, most recent stuff leans into this vein. So, but yeah, I mean, hey, good performance.
Yeah, very solid.
Speaking of good performances, the co-lead of the film, James Ortiz as Rocky.
Oh yeah.
How did you feel about Rocky the Alien?
I love Rocky. I loved Rocky in the book. I love him in the movie. I wasn't aware, like you were, that it was all practical, that it was a puppet. I had no idea. I'm glad they went that route. It looks great. Uh, it his movements and his mannerisms in the movie feel like what I imagined them when I was reading the book. Um, so all around, it felt fantastic as far as the way that they portrayed Rocky. Um, and I'm glad that they did it practically as opposed to CGI. I don't think it would have really um, you would have really felt the chemistry between Ryland Grace's character and Rocky's character if he were, you know, a CGI uh, model, or some guy in a suit with dots all around him. Um, I prefer the fact that they did it practically.
I was fine with Rocky. I
Yeah.
thought it looked great. It was an interesting type of alien, seeing how they learn to communicate, even though they learn to communicate in a montage that takes about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I am somewhat tired of I am the side character who takes everything literally thing in
Yeah.
movies. But you know what? Hey, that's not Andy Weir's fault or Rocky's fault.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm like, okay, I don't know. Characters can have a personality beyond just, I take everything literally. What do you mean? And it's like, we get it. We get it. Our main character is a cool guy, and you're not, but you love each other. Anyway.
Yeah, I felt that the um montage was a little off. Like I didn't, because in the book, like, it takes a little bit longer. Like there's an explanation of how they communicate with each other, and they draw that out a little bit more, a lot more actually. And in this, it was just like boom, they understand each other, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
ah, I meh, okay. Like, I understand that you're trying to get to the meat and potatoes of this whole thing, but in order to really understand their chemistry, at least in the movie, you'll have to really show how they got to a point to where they can communicate and get to know each other, get to know why each other is there, um, and flesh out that relationship, because that's how they bonded, is figuring out how to communicate with each other. And I felt that they kind of missed the mark on that a little bit. Now, granted, the movie still works and it's fine, but they could have expanded on that a little bit more just to show how they got to where they are now, and how uh, their emotions are with each other after they had spent that extended amount of time figuring each other out, essentially. Because that's what
Yeah.
they were doing. They're both scientists. They're both trying to figure things out. He's more of an engineer, but Rocky's more of an engineer, but he still has that science-like mind where he's wanting to figure out the ins and outs of things. And that's something that they really fleshed out in the book, and they didn't really flesh that out in the movie. So since they spent so much time together trying to figure each other out, that's how their chemistry kind of grew. But they didn't really, expand on that as much, which is fine. But I would have preferred if they did that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not advocating for this film being any longer than it is. And that's probably my second big gripe with the movie. I was like, I don't know. I don't know that this needs to be quite so long. And of course, the people who really love this didn't feel the runtime. I did. And I was, going into the film with a open heart, and I still was like, all right, can we wrap this up? Can we? Can we just do it? But I did enjoy it. I did. And I want to keep pointing that out because I don't want to be lumped in with the people who are very loudly not enjoying
And very annoyingly.
the space movie with a rock side character.
And
Yeah.
their gripes are so dumb, by the way. Like, everything that they're saying makes no sense as far as, like, why they don't like it. And I'm like, okay, clearly you didn't read the book. And two, you just want to hate on things for the sake of hating on things. That's what it
Mhm.
feels like, at least for a lot of the people that I've seen. I say criticize, but it doesn't seem like they're really quote unquote criticizing it. They're more just screaming into the void for the sake of, getting some sort of Twitter rocks off or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Okay, so to me, the meat of the meat and potatoes of this film, the great Sandra Huller, she is so funny
Yeah.
in this film. I appreciated how she plays against Gosling's version of comedy, which is like screaming and falling and quipping and whatever. And Huler is so deadpan and so dry. And she is, a version of that character. Like when we meet her, she literally says, I don't do well with jokes or whatever. And so it's that same idea of like, I take everything literally. What do you mean? But man, I just appreciated it so much more coming from her. And I was also glad that she was given an opportunity to be so funny and to showcase her talents beyond um, some of the more dramatic roles that we've seen her in recently. And not that I've tired of those in the slightest, but it was like, wow, here's great proof that she can do more than that type of movie. How did you feel about her?
She was a perfect casting choice for Strat. Um, Played the part perfectly. Uh, a lot of the same like tone that you see in the movie is what they had for Strat's character in the book. So it looks and feels and sounds as if they took Strat, took the personification of Strat, and just threw it on a screen. Like, it is perfectly done. I love Sandra Huller anyway. So I didn't know how she was gonna do in this movie because I've only seen her in dramatic roles. So I was like, okay, we'll see. 5 minutes in, I was like, oh yeah, perfect. I'm like, yeah, this is great. I don't, I'm already locked in on Huller being Strat, and I don't see her as Sandra Huller. I see her as Strat in this moment. And I think that's obviously why they casted her, or cast her. But she did a fantastic job. She killed it.
I also really appreciated her karaoke scene. And I know that that's not in the book, and some people might find it to be superfluous, but you know what? I really liked it. I felt it was a good kind of slow down moment. And, now I've seen Sandra Hüller perform Sign of the Times. So that's a win in my book.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was out of place. It didn't feel uh weird or anything. It felt like it fit into the movie quite well.
Mhm.
Um I didn't expect it. So whenever it did kind of take that little I guess tonal shift and slow down, I was like, "Oh hell yeah, this is great." Um and I like you said, I'd never seen her sing either. So I was like, "Oh, I'm pleasantly surprised by her ability to sing."
So the film lacks a villain for the most part until almost the end. depending on how you feel about Strat's actions with Grace in forcing him onto the ship, because the infection is, they're just cells, they don't have a plan beyond reproduction. The way that they do it is interesting and obviously quite deadly for everyone else involved, but it's very neutral. They don't have any ill will towards the planets or the stars that they're destroying, and they probably aren't even conscious of it. And I really appreciate when a story can be told that is, for the most part, like I said, without a villain. I'm not going to ask you if you agree or disagree 100%. I will say that I do. And it's quite laughable to me. I shouldn't say this because now I'm going to ask you to answer and you might say this. But I just don't care about people's ethic dilemmas of whether Strat is a fascist or not when the entire planet is going to be destroyed. Yeah. So call me a fascist, I suppose.
No. You're nowhere near a fascist. Yeah, if anyone makes that argument, they're morons and clearly don't know what the word fascist means. But I don't view her in that light at all. I don't even see her as an antagonist or anything in this movie. I see her as someone who understands the severity of the situation that they're in, um, has worked really hard to try and figure out how to come up with a solution and how to execute that solution to then make sure that her, you know, family or lineage or even everybody else's family and lineage are still going to be around in the next 30 to 40 years. She is someone who sees the writing on the wall and wants to figure out a way to fix things. And it's the only way in her mind to do that is to go and attack the problem on its own turf. And the only way you could do that is by manning up this mission, sending them out to the stars, and seeing if they can get it done. It's very Armageddon-esque in that way. Uh, so I don't view her as any sort of villain or antagonist or anything. I view her as someone who just felt the necessity to take things into her own hands and get shit done when it needs to get done.
And now, to be clear, I'm saying this about a fictional character in a fictional
Right, it's not
science
real.
fiction story where everyone on the planet is going to die. And so, yes, that line of thinking filtered down into our real world of saying, yeah, well, people are expendable. And yes, that is wrong. No one should do that. We should not be making those decisions on behalf of other people. I agree. But in this case,
yeah, I don't
if
think
we got to
morality.
kill one Ryan Gosling,
Yeah.
to save not only our planet, but also like 2 planets full of intelligent life, you can have Ryan Gosling,
I mean, let's be honest. If all the people who are saying that she's a fascist ended up in this same position, if this were a real situation, and they would have all ended up in the same position that she was in, do you really think they're all going to sit there and go, "But no, we can't do that"? No, they're going to be like, "F this, let's figure this out."
No, I think that some people probably would. I think
Well, then they clearly don't have
actually
enough compassion for the rest of their.
Well, but compassion for everyone is useless if you don't respect the individual's rights.
Yeah, but
Like I
this is
said,
so
I
much the
agree with
trolley
all of
car
this stuff
thing.
in real life, but
Yeah.
this isn't real life.
Yeah, true.
This
is
is a
all just a made-up story.
movie. Was it incredibly ethical of Obi-Wan Kenobi to hand teenage Luke Skywalker a lightsaber and be like, all right, kid, let's go train you? And, I know that the Empire just a few years ago literally hunted down and slaughtered every Jedi, but maybe it would be fun to, teach you about this. No training, no preparation. Let's just go off. No, it's not. But you know what? No one cares. And if you do, I got to tell you, maybe you might need a new hobby. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we can't live in a world where we think that everything has to be ethical, especially in art or anything like that. Because let's be honest, the entire world is not ethical in any way. So, you know, you can't view art as having to be
Right. It's a
completely
story.
ethical.
A story doesn't adhere to scientific reality or ethical reality. You know, it's a story. All right. I wanted to talk about Lionel Boyce as Carl. I have seen Lionel Boyce in Jackass Forever, and I think that that's it.
Oh yeah, no, I I didn't know his name right off the bat. I recognized him immediately though, and it wasn't from Jackass Forever. I can't remember what else it was, and it bothered me even then that I couldn't remember, um, what I saw him in or what I
Well, it says
recognized
here
him
that he
from.
was in The Bear.
Yes, he was. Yes,
Yes. And he
yes.
was also
Is it
a
pastry
member
chef?
of Odd Future.
I did not know that he was a part of Odd Future.
Yeah.
I knew him from The Bear because that's what I saw him in predominantly. It was bothering me that I couldn't remember that at the time.
So Lionel Boyce plays Carl. He's the government agent, muscle, security turned scientific partner. I liked Carl.
Carl's
I found
great.
him to be delightful.
Yeah.
I know because of the way that the story works that, we can't be sending messages back and forth to Earth and then to the ship, but I do wish that we had gotten a little more Carl, but that's okay.
Yeah, he wasn't really in the book that much either. I think he was actually in the movie more than he was in the book. But for me, that was fine because it played off perfectly with how they were kind of trying to figure out, how the astrophage actually works. So it didn't really bother me that he was in it as much, and I enjoyed Lionel Boyce being there and playing off with Ryland to figure this all out. Yeah, I thought it was great.
How do you feel about space?
In general,
Yeah.
I've always had an interest in space, because we don't necessarily know everything that's going on up there, and the fact that the universe continues to expand day by day, and we don't necessarily know why that is. It does. So I do have an interest in it because I'm sure, and I'm almost positive that there's life out there outside of our own planet. So it intrigues me that there's this entire thing out there that it surrounds us, but we know nothing about it or next to nothing about it. Um, and I think that they captured space or a fictitious space, even if you want to look at it that way, quite well. It made me think about a lot of other space movies that I've seen, like Apollo 13 and Interstellar and all these others that I've seen, and it made me just like really enjoy the fact that they centered the entire movie around space.
Yeah, I'm not a big space guy. In real life, I don't really think, going to Mars is a great idea. I definitely subscribe to the thought that like everything in space is designed to kill human beings.
That's fair.
So it does seem like an incredible waste of resources. I say, hey, you know what? Let's figure some stuff out here before we move on to another planet and destroy that one. But, hey, what do I know? But as far as space in films, I love it. And I think that this is a good, like I said, the effects all felt very grounded, very realistic. I say realistic as if I've been on a spacewalk, but they feel there's weight to them. They look good or interesting, and yeah, I appreciate it. I guess I'm middle of the road on this movie. I don't think that it's baby slop for idiots, and I also don't think that it's the greatest movie ever made. I saw someone say like, "This is the best movie of the year so far," and I'm like, "Yeah." After January and February, what are we?
Yeah, I mean
What are
we've
you
got
talking about?
We've got so many others that are about to be absolute heavy hitters, so I can't, say that this is
Yeah.
going to be the best movie of the year.
Yeah, I can't understand relating to films this way of like, well, the best of the year and thinking in terms of math,
Yeah.
Project Hail Mary. We can just experience it and enjoy it and walk away and say that was fun and funny, and maybe I was inspired, or maybe I was a little challenged by the ethical dilemma. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that we did not talk about that you want to mention?
Not necessarily. I enjoyed the score of this. I know that they're going to be doing a 2 LP vinyl for like, $130 of the soundtrack, and I'm sitting there eyeing it. I'm like, you know what? I may have to grab it, but I enjoyed the soundtrack a lot. I enjoyed the score a lot, um, and I felt that it really meshed well with uh, with the movie, as far as like everything that's going around. It didn't feel like the score was trying too hard and trying to stick out. I felt like it melded perfectly with everything else around it.
Yes, definitely. Everything, every department, I think, should be proud.
Yeah.
Of the film. Whether or not it connects is a different question, but I don't think that anything was really skimped on, And again, like I said, in an increasingly digital world, it's nice to have a movie that feels real.
Yeah, it felt like the practicality of it all really felt like very Farscape-esque. It felt like I was watching something from like the Henson family, who was, going and putting on this massive production for, this massive movie. And it felt really grounded and great because of the fact that they spent all that time and money and resources on keeping everything as practical as possible. Um, Otherwise, it would have felt just fake and strange. But yeah, it felt fantastic.
Yeah. All right, Jake, where can people find you online?
People could find me on Twitter. I think it's Average Film Guy on Twitter, as the handle. And then find me on Letterboxd, which is connected to my Twitter. You can find it there. And then, as we talked about in the beginning, I do have a podcast called the First Watch Podcast. I think I'm gonna hit you up here soon, as far as like getting you on again for another movie that we're gonna do. But yeah, if you guys want to stop on by and listen to that, or if any of you out there want to be on said podcast, let me know.
Yeah, definitely reach out. It's a fun time, and sometimes you need a little help being forced to watch a movie that you've been meaning to watch. It's a fun thing about watch list. It's like that's where movies go to die. Like, yeah, I'll watch that. You put it on your watch list. It's like, I'm never gonna watch this.
Yep.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you give us a rating and review wherever you are listening. If your podcast player allows for comments or likes or whatever, hey, you know what? We appreciate it. You don't have to, though. I'm not going to chase you down and put a needle in your back, and then you'll wake up in a coma 11 years later, realizing that you have left us a review. I won't do that to you, okay? This isn't the fate of the world. This is serious. This is podcast reviews. You can also send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about Project Hail Mary, Ryan Gosling wearing things that you then want to buy, anything. You can also support the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. $5 a month gets you access to all of our additional episodes, our patron-only Discord. You get to vote on upcoming episodes every single month, and every quarter a monthly theme. Oh my goodness. Ad-free episodes also. You know what, folks? Wow. I'm just going to say it. Wow. That's right. That's patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Well, hey, Drake, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Of course. I'm glad I finally got to come on.
And hey, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Theme music by Jean Marie Vargas. Visit us at our website, moviefriendspodcast.com, and please subscribe and rate our show wherever you are listening. You can support Movie Friends at patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Thanks for listening.